How's it going, everyone? This is Brian and welcome back to the Tech Stack Playbook, your guide to apps, software, and tech, but in a fun way, I promise. I am really glad to be back. Last week, I was in Las Vegas for AWS reInvent, and the entire week was absolutely incredible. I'm not sure if you had a chance to check out my vlog series on it. I'm still going to be uploading more content even though reInvent is over, but I had an amazing time. And if you haven't checked out my videos on my YouTube channel, I'll drop a link in either above or in the description below, but definitely hope that you can check it out. It was so transformational. I got to meet so many people. I got to learn so much. It was one of the best experiences I've probably ever had in terms of tech and in terms of networking, conferencing. It was just so amazing. It was so well done, and it was just really amazing. So thank you so much to the AWS grants team. I won an All Builders Welcome Grant to attend the conference, so I was just so grateful to have even been given the chance and the opportunity to go and also just to learn and really just be enmeshed and immersed in the serverless ecosystem and cloud and AWS. So it was just so amazing, and I have so much gratitude, and I'm so thankful for that opportunity. So what I want to be able to talk to you all about coming back from that week, basically being in Las Vegas was just so amazing to just kind of get out of the regular grind, and I was able to just get a lot of perspectives. I talked to a lot of people, and I got some feedback also on my channel, and a lot of what people were telling me was they wanted more content on serverless. They wanted more understandings of full stack development. They wanted to know how to build a feature from beginning to end. So what I'm really excited to start sharing is more content on the Tech Stack Playbook to, first of all, help you build those tech stack frameworks, but then also be able to build, and second, being able to create real solutions that can do things. And this specific video today is going to be walking you through how to pass data throughout your application. And this is one of the most important topics, I think, for any app developer or any software engineer, because of course there's all these articles and tutorials of how to data structures and algorithms, but how do you actually present that in an application where that makes sense? Specifically, a great use case for this is how do you get data from a file into a table, or how do you hard code your own table that can then pass in data into those as elements? So that's something that I'm really excited to be going through with you. And we're not just going to be going through one method. We're not just going to be going through two methods. We're not just going through three methods. We're going through 5 specific methods of how to pass data into your application. So I'm just going to list them off right now, but we are going to be going through specifically hard coding data into a table. We're going to be talking about template literals. We're going to be talking about passing data as props throughout the table. We're then going to be creating our own JSON file and then passing in JSON data into the application. And then number 5, we're going to be then exporting a JS object and then passing that into a table as well. So we are just going through a couple of these methods. We're going to go through 5 specific use cases of data and how that can be passed through an application. And I'm so excited to be sharing this with you all because I think this will be really helpful and sort of create a all-in-one solution of different, or an all-in-one place where you can then see different ways to pass in data. So I'm really excited to be doing this. I'm going to roll through the clip next, but stay tuned and feel free to code along with me. I tried to make this as interactive as possible and really showing you from beginning to end how this can work. So again, really excited to be sharing this with you, and yeah, looking forward to hearing what you think. And please, if you have not already, please destroy that like button down below. Please absolutely obliterate it for the YouTube algorithm. If not anything else, do it for the YouTube algorithm. And also make sure to subscribe and hit that bell notification so that you can get notified when I go live or when I make more videos like this. So again, feel free to like and subscribe, and also feel free to comment below what you thought of this video. And also, if you run into anything or any errors, please let me know. I'll try to help you. And yeah, just feel free to let me know what you think. But I'll roll it next, and let's get into it. For this video, we are going to be going through several ways to render data in the front end of an application. Specifically, we're going to be using React, but this is a way that typically will apply to any sort of front-end framework that you are working with or an application that you're building. So a lot of where I wanted to make this specific video to be helpful for anyone that's watching this is there's a lot of different ways to use different basically ways to manage your data. So data structures, different ways to manage and hold information. But then, of course, there's like the videos of what those are, but then how do you actually visualize those in the front end? So there's different ways to do that with like template literals, with arrays. There's ways to use JSON data. There's ways to create variables and then import those into fields. So there's a lot of different ways that we can dive into here. And I really want this video to be helpful for anyone that's thinking about, basically, I have this data, but then how do I visualize it, or how do I put it into something? So we're going to be using a table as a model or a use case to visualize this. I think it's kind of easy because if you have a lot of different items that have similar properties, you often might want to put it into an Excel type table where there's rows and then there's columns, and the data can be visualized similarly or in similar ways. So we're going to be going through this repository that I created, and I used Code Sandbox just to build this out, but we're going to be using Visual Studio Code to map this out. I was just working on this just to kind of make it a little bit easy. So what we're going to be doing is 5 different ways to manage this. So the first is hard-coded data. So this is a hard-coded table, as you see. So I put in all of these manually. Then you can use something called template literals and import data directly into a table. You can also, for the third method, you can pass in data as props, and you'll be able to see how you can store variables and then put props throughout the application into a table format. The fourth way is with JSON data. So that's a JSON data file, and then it renders into the app. And then for the fifth one, I just exported JavaScript files. So be able to see how we could export basically files similar to the JSON method, but destructuring the variable data and then using that to using the spread operator to put that into rows and columns. So this is awesome. This is going to be really helpful, I think, for a lot of people. And let's get into it. All right, so we are now going to be going through this project, and when we think about putting data into React, I'm going to be creating a series of 5 exercises with you that's going to go through these 5 different methods. So the first one, as you'll see on the screen, it's with hard-coded data. So this is a hard-coded table, and we're just going to be seeing how to put the top-level titles and then the bottom-level information. The next, in method 2, we're going to be going through template literals. So this is a way to create variables and then call those into our application in some way. The third method, which we'll be going through, is on passing in data as props. And this is where we're going to be able to create these components with data fields, and we'll use a template to then pass information through that. The fourth method is with JSON data. So that's going to be creating a JSON data file format and then being able to then map that information into a table. And you'll see here, there's all of those items for fruits. And then in method 5, we're going to be taking exported JavaScript objects and then put those into different fields, like you'll see here with like 2 different tables. So this is going to be a lot. We're going to be diving into each part, and we'll go through every step of the way. But big shout out to Britannica for the descriptions for all of the different fruits, and also to randomcitypicker.net, randomcity.net for being able to help with sourcing the locations for all the different fruits. So let us get into this. So for the first step, we are going to be creating this project, and I'll walk you through sort of the overline structure in Code Sandbox before we start building this. I'm going to build it in VS Code, but sort of having a module in Code Sandbox I found is really helpful for being able to create and design fast iterations without needing to install or stuff on your computer. So for this first one, for the data, right, let's start us off with this one. So what we're going to do is we are going to create our project. So I'm going to cd into Playbook, and we are going to do npx create React app, and then we'll call put data into React.js. So we're going to basically call this function, and hopefully you can see my screen, and I'll boost this up just so that you can see. So npx create React app, and then put data into React. So press enter. And this is going to bootstrap the React bootstrap format and this template. So this is how you're able to create a React project really easily and use the template that's already been created, thanks to create React app. And then what we use here, so npx, it's the same thing as npm. It's just more optimized for new versions of React. And then put data into React.js. This is going to create our project folder. So that's what we'll be creating right now. And while that is booting up, I'm just gonna put this all the way to the right, just so you can see. It kind of messes up if you have, if you like mess around with the screen. So while that's booting up, I'm just gonna walk through everything really fast. So for method number 1, we're gonna be hard coding data. So what I mean by that is we're gonna be creating this data table, and it has a series of headers and then a series of descriptions or items underneath. So that's all well and good, and that's probably the easiest one here. Then for template literals, we're then going to be creating some variables, and in the same template for the table that we had before, except we're going to be passing in these curly bracket variables, and that's going to be taking in this information above and then putting it in here to emulate a table. For the next one, when we're passing in data as props, so this one for here. So what we're basically doing is creating a component or a repeatable component that has a series of data fields. And then we get this from a helper field right here where we're passing in data. Oh yeah, it's just because it's defaulting to this one. Exit that out. So while we are doing this, so we're going to basically create this table. It's going to look exactly like the previous exercise with those template literals, except it's creating this template where there's no data in here, obviously. So what we're going to do is then pass in this data into the component. So then when you list out these components, it would list them out directly, which is awesome. Now for the 4th method, for the JSON data, we are going to be creating a JSON data file. So I created a folder called fruits.json, and that includes a list of different items. And also for anyone that is interested in sort of how I'm wrapping the code in the IDE, for anyone that's on Mac, it's Option Z. And for anyone that's on Windows, it's Alt Z. So this is a great keyboard shortcut for anything that you need to have. Just sometimes it's easier to write the code and sort of make it all look legible here. I'm just gonna make this out a little bit. And it looks like it just finished installing, which is great. And what we're gonna be having here is, so that's the JSON data table, right? Now, when we have this file, we're then going to call this file as data. We're going to use the use state hook in React. We're going to create basically this verb called fruits and then set fruits. And we're going to be using the data from this. And then when we have these headers are here, but then in the T body, so not the T head of the table, but T body, we're going to take the fruits. So take the fruits from use state that we're already mapping there. We're going to map it, and then we're going to call in fruit. So that's calling in all this stuff. So each of these items in the JSON data is a fruit item, right? So we're going to take each of these items, each of these array structures, and then pass it in. So it's going to say fruit.id, fruit.name, fruit.color, fruit.location. So all of these different items, those are going to be there. And then we're going to map that out. So that's why you have all these items here. It's actually probably a little bit easier to see if you spend it out. So all these items are here, which is great. Now for method 5, which is just exporting data. So what we're going to be doing is taking in these variable objects, which has ID, name, color. So all the different variables here is just exported as variables. We're then going to take those and copy them into different tables. And we're going to use something called the spread operator, which basically allows you to basically take this file, which we're taking the ID, the name, the color as sort of the template literal example. But then when we have an app.js, we're then going to basically take this component, which is that file here, and then wrap with spread operator strawberry or apple. And that's what's getting from this. So strawberry and apple, you spread those items throughout the table here. So we're going to be getting into all of this type of stuff, but we are already off to the races. So let us open this up. So I'm going to CD and I'm going to open up my folder here. So CD there. So I'm already in this project. I'm going to open it up in Visual Studio Code. And we are going to get started. And in the meantime, I'm going to move this terminal off screen and I'm going to make this smaller. And I'm gonna make this bigger just so that it's a little bit more optimized for you all to see. Okay, cool. So we have our app.js file, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this. So we'll do our start. And what we're basically doing is using this package.json file to run the file. And sometimes this will happen where it says that the path isn't exported correctly. So a great hack for figuring out how to move around this is just delete node modules. We're going to delete yarn.lock. And we are going to then do yarn install. And we're just going to reinstall all of these packages. Sometimes when you do npx, it uses npm. Then when you do yarn start, sometimes there's conflicts. So what we're going to do is basically just delete the node modules in the first place. We're then going to then create them again, but we're going to, instead of using node package manager, we're going to use yarn package. And I use yarn for my builds and for my projects. It works really great in terms of like building the project and using CI/CD. So just want to make sure that you're using only one of them and not both. Because if you use both, there's often conflicts, sometimes like what you'll see here. So we're going to wait for this to get booted up. And then I'm going to walk you through the React app and we will get started. Get some water in the meantime. And I might actually just make this a little bit bigger just so that it's easier for you guys to read it. And hopefully you're able to zoom in if it's not big enough for you to read. You should be able to zoom in, and hopefully it's high res enough for you to see. All right, that's an example of what we are going to be building. So I'm going to refresh this because we're going to be building from localhost. And obviously I don't have anything running on localhost right now, but I will soon. So it looks like Node Package Manager is almost done building. And it's going to be just building all of these packages here for us to use. And these are, I actually went through node modules a while ago, and these are like thousands of files. So there's so much that is in here that we don't have to code, which is so great. So we are going to do yarn start, and this should boot up. And we'll just wait for this. And as soon as you start seeing the developer server starting, that's a good sign. And it means that the application is going to be running. So again, for anyone that sort of runs into that issue where you do, npx create React app and then it fails to run, just delete node modules, delete yarn lock, and then restart it, and then you'll be able to get it running. All right, awesome. So we have this here, which is great. And this means that we're using the template, and it of course has that little spinning wheel, which is what we like to see. So what we're going to now do is delete a bunch of stuff. So you don't have to really worry about sort of exactly what we're deleting. We're just taking out all of the starter code, and we're going to basically be able to start from scratch. So I just deleted pretty much all of this type of stuff. So this is now going to give us a white screen, and we're going to delete that React logo because we don't need that anymore. And also what we don't need, we're going to go to index or app.css, and we are going to remove all of that formatting for the header and the logo and the link because we don't need it. And we're going to save it. So that makes it super easy. Okay, great. So now we're starting from scratch. And what we want to be able to do is build out this project. So what I created was a series of different exercises, and we're going to go through each of them. in the application. So I'm just gonna build out just a little header just to kind of give us some perspective of this. So header, one. I'm just gonna copy in the text that I got. So, and then we'll save it. So as you'll see, so as I'm saving it, it's using Node.js in the backend to power the server, and I'm able to write and have it save and then update onto the local host instantly, which is so awesome. Then I'm just gonna put a little header here, and then we're gonna give some credit to our sources here. So in terms of where I'm sourcing the descriptions for each of the fruits, I got that from Britannica. So they are amazing online encyclopedia to be able to get information. And then I picked a random city for each of the different fruits just to give it a location as some data. So in terms of the randomcity.net, it's an awesome web application to be able to then just pick a random city. So again, shout out to Britannica and randomcity.net for. So now what we're going to do, so we are going to be building out our first module. So I'm going to just do a break. And for our first one, we are going to have method number 1, hard coded data. And then we'll give this a description. And I'm just going to pull this up. Try to find my other example. To align my screen a little bit more. Okay, cool. So we are going to create a p tag, and we'll do let's hard code a table in HTML in React. Okay, cool. So this is going to be our first exercise. So what we're going to do first is we're going to create, and just in terms of organization, so we're going to create a components folder. And then in this, I'm going to create our first exercise. So we do O1 hard-coded table.js. So something that is super helpful for anyone that is coding in React JavaScript, definitely recommend you check out the React snippet extension. This is so awesome for this. So it has 4 million downloads. 5 stars, 43 reviews. So it's definitely super legit. It's super helpful, and it has extensions and snippets for being able to code really fast. So shout out to DSE NAJDR. I don't know how to say that username, but really great person who put this all together. So what we're going to be able to do, and why this is so powerful and helpful, is because what we're going to be able to do is type in this specific command and then RAFCE, and then when we press enter, it's going to already create a functional React component for us already. This is super awesome because, and again, of course, you want to know the fundamentals of React components, but being able to just code so much faster as opposed to typing in all of this stuff, and then maybe you make an error and then something doesn't work. So you want to be able to move as fast as possible. So something that I'm going to do is just make this into a component readable format. So hard-coded table, and then I'll put that in the bottom. So basically what we're doing is importing React from the React dependency library from Node modules here, and then we create a variable, a functional component called hard-coded table. We're not passing in really any props or anything like that right now, but we're using arrow function, and then it's going to have a return statement, and then we'll put that there. So what's going to be really great is let us say h3, and we're going to say hard-coded data table goes here. Okay, cool. So we're going to save this. Whoops. We're going to save this. Okay. So we saved it, but it's not coming into the app. Why is that? So what we really need to do is import our component. So what we're going to do is, and as soon as I start writing the component for hard-coded table, Visual Studio Code, shout out to Microsoft Visual Studio Code, they're already pulling in that component. It already knows that it exists. So I'm going to click this. I'm going to click this to exit out of the component, but it already is putting this into my application at the top, which is just so awesome. So I don't have to worry about routing. I don't have to worry about all this stuff. Obviously, I might make another video about routing at some point because that might be really helpful for folks, but it's already doing all that for us, which is so awesome. So now when I save it, I already have it here. So my component is now listed under this component. So that's really great. So now what we want to do is basically build out our table. And what I mean by that is we are going to code out all of this stuff by hand. So we're going to stay within the div. We are going to start typing our table. So this is how you initialize a table. So you type in table, and you do PR, and then for this top level resource, we're going to have a number of different fields. So we are going to have an ID. We are going to then have the name of the fruit. The ID is the identification of each item. Then there's going to be a color of the fruit. There is also going to be a location of the fruit. And there's also going to be a date. There's also going to be a description, which we'll call info. And the info comes from Britannica. And then we'll also link our source in Britannica to cite our source. So all of this stuff is going into this TR component. And then for the TR body, we are then going to do another TR. And then we're going to do, instead of TH, we're going to do TD. So instead of ID, we'll do 0. To start off our structure, we're going to call this strawberry. We're then going to have this red. And you're going to start to see that now I'm lining this up, of course. So ID matches up with 0. Name is strawberry. Color is red. We're then going to do this again. For the location, we're going to do this for the date. We're going to do this for the description. So I'm going to copy this just so that you don't have to watch me code all of this. And we have a link here. So one more TD. All right, cool. So this has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So this has those 7 items. Now I just want to hide this stuff for you because I want you to see what actually happens when we are creating this table. So what we're doing here is we are creating a table with this top level resource, and these are the headers in bold. So it has these 7 different categories of data that we're gonna align with each of our fruits. So all of our fruits will have these 7 variable items. So now what we want to be able to do is, of course, this isn't very helpful because this doesn't show anything. So what's awesome about being able to use this is as soon as I add this underneath it with TD and I save it, not only did it put our data from this object into the table, but it also made it responsive. And obviously, like if you wanted it to be mobile responsive, you of course would maybe want like React tables or Material UI as a design library. But I mean, look at how responsive this is. So this is aligning each of these items with the columns. So we didn't even have to really add any styles. It's already doing this for us, which I think is awesome. So now this is really great. Now let us make another one. Let's say that we want to have more information or something like that. So now let's add an apple, for example. So what we're going to do, so I'm just going to enter this just so that it's easy to see. We're going to do another TR. So you'll see here, so this is separated here. So what we're going to do is we are going to create a TD, and we're going to put 1. We are going to then have a name for this fruit. So this fruit is apple. Apples are the color red. So we're going to have red again. This has a different location. So I'm going to copy that there. This has a different date. So I'm going to copy this here. And this has a different description. I'm going to put that here. And I'm sure you all wouldn't want to see me writing out, so we're gonna have that there. Just copy paste and put this there. I swear the person who created the copy and paste feature should be like a billionaire. Like, that is such a great and useful tool. We love copy and paste. Okay, awesome. So I just created this here. So I'm sure you all might be able to guess what's going to happen when I save it. So now, look at that. So now it's aligning this second object with this first object. So now we're able to put all of this information together, and you can see how we'd be able to then build out our table. But is this really efficient? Definitely not. I'm just using this as an example to show you how you could create a table if you wanted to, but I think that we could probably make, something a little bit more efficient. But this is an awesome first step for being able to hard code data into a table and then visualize that. So what we're going to do is we are first of all going to celebrate the fact that we did this. We're going to put a green check mark here. Boom. All right. So we are going to pat ourselves on the back and say, awesome job that we just got this. So let's see now, where we can take this a little bit more. So now what we're going to do is we are going to use an HR to pick this up. And I am going to now create another method. So we're going to copy this. And for method 2, what we are going to be doing next is template literals. So I'm going to call this template literals. And we are going to copy this in here. So this is basically just going to be able to allow us to, let's put some variables, call them in our table. So we are going to now save this. And now we're going to put this here. Okay, so this is now onto exercise number 2, where we're going to use template literals. So I'm sure you can guess, we are going to create a new file. It's going to be 02 template literals.js. And what we're going to do is, again, RAFCE. We're going to do that. And we're going to make this React readable friendly. So we're going to call this template literals, and then we're going to export this as template literals. We are then going to make this here and say template literals table go tier. Awesome. So again, obviously nothing's going to show because we haven't imported it yet. So we are going to then put this here. So template literals, and boom, it is already pulling this up for us. So we're going to press enter. We are then going to call this. We're going to make sure that it's imported correctly. And as soon as we save, this should pop up. All right, so we have this component here. So now what we're going to do is we are going to create some variables, and then we are going to then put those into our table. So similar to the table we did before, this is going to make it really easy to do this. Actually, I'm going to make it zoomed in. Okay, great. So when we have this here, so we're passing in any props into this specific component. This is just the page with the table that we're going to build. So we're going to start creating some variables. So I'm going to basically create all the different 7 variables that we had here. So for example, for the strawberry, it had an ID of 0, const name, and const is just how we declare variables. So, and then we set it to a string. So this was the strawberry variable, const color equals red, the strawberries are red, const location equals guitar, and then const purchase on equals 1201 const description equals, and then we're going to copy this in from Britannica so that you all don't have to watch me type it all in manually. Thank you, Britannica. And then const source equals, and the link to our source, to cite our source. Great. So it's going to give you sort of this error, and it's this ESLint no unused vars warning. It's basically just going to say that you're not using these variables, and sometimes if you're trying to deploy to production, it'll reject or it won't build properly if you have this there. So this is just a check to make sure that you're obviously using the variables that you need and you're not calling anything that could mess up the application looking for something that doesn't exist. So if we save that, of course, it's going to go from the compiled successfully to it'll give us these errors, but our app is still running, which is great. So we're going to fix this because we're going to actually be calling these variables. So in the same way that we did in the first exercise, we're going to create our table. So view table here. We're then going to do tr for this top level resource. We're going to do th, and we are going to basically copy that same thing from above, just so that I don't have to keep having you rewatch me type the same thing. So I'm just going to copy this in here from before and format there. Okay, so again, top level resource. These are the different headers. So ID, name, color, location, date, info, link. And when we save this, we're going to see this in the same way. However, now what we want to be able to do is call these as variables. So we're going to do tr in the same way. We are actually going to be duplicating this. However, we're going to be calling in these variables. So how do you actually call them? So we can do it like that. So now you're going to start to see that these variables will start to come to life. And I'm actually just going to put this in here just for speed's sake. So for example, if you wanted to just have all of these items with the ID, it's going to have a whole bunch of zeros here. So obviously that's not the data that we want. So we're going to put the name into the second one. We're going to put the color into the third one. We're going to put the location into the fourth one. We're going to put the purchased on into the fifth one. We're going to put the description into the sixth one. Ooh. Not the whole thing, just the variable. This one. And then the source into the seventh one. So now when we press save, it looks pretty similar to what we have. Although I made it bold, so I'm just going to change all of this to TD. And this is going to try to add way more stuff than I need. TD. And we're going to change all of this out. TD. And one last one. All right. So when we save this, it should now be unbolded and it should look like the object. And great. So we have that just like that. So that's great. And this is a way where we're able to then call this variable into here. And then that's where we're going to be able to just take this data, which is a variable which includes a string of information or an integer, and then put that into our table, just like that. Okay, awesome. So we just did the second exercise, which is awesome. So we are going to give ourselves a pat on the back and give us a good old green check mark because we just did that, which is awesome. Okay, now the next exercise we're going to be doing is passing in data as props. So we are going to close this out with the HR tags. We're then going to make another one, and we are going to copy this. We're going to call this 3. So what we're specifically going to do is we'll put in some variable data into a component and then render that into our table. So we're going to save this and we're already there. And I'm going to put just some breaks just so that it's a little bit easier for us to give us a little bit of breathing room. So that we can scroll a little bit better. Okay, great. So now we, as I'm sure you're going to guess, we are going to create a new file. It's going to be 03. We're going to call this as data as props.js. So we're going to do RAFCE again. We are going to press enter, and then we're going to make this React readable friendly. Save this. say 3. And that as props table goes here. We're going to save that. And now we are going to import this into our application. So do that component again. Data as props, and it already knows that that is what we want. Thank you so much, VS Code. So already there. When we save it, there. And I'm gonna just indent these a little bit just so that it's a little bit easier to see where all these are coming from. So here, I'm just gonna check on how it's coming out so far. All right, so we should be good there. And that's all compiled correctly. Okay, great. So now we are going to then go to pass data in as props, and the pass data in as props is going to go here. So now what do we want to do exactly? All right, so let us start with some code. So what we really want to do, and this is sort of helpful, I think, for anyone that is looking to sort of visualize how this all functions. So I'm going to draw this out just because sometimes I think it's easy to show the drawing and sort of visualize things for you. So hopefully you all can see my screen. So what I'm going to be able to sort of show is there's sort of two elements to passing in data as props. I'm going to test my drawing skills here. Okay, so there's the component that you render, so component render, and then there's the helper template. Okay, so when you have a component, of course, it's going to sort of have this component, so it's going to say component, and then it's going to sort of have maybe this like thing here, and it's going to say component. Okay, great. So when you pass in a component, you can pass in data. So for example, we could say ID equals 0, name equals straw, berry. Maybe there is a, or something else. There's like a source or something like that. And then there is a link. And of course that would be there. We'd have some, quotation marks here. So that's what we'll have in the component. But then how do you get this data to be passed in or be formatted a certain way? So we have this helper function or this helper template that's going to basically define out this table. So when we have the table here, right? So we'll have this table. So in the T body and the T head, so there's the T head, and then the T body. So the T head is going to be sort of the information of like the headers, but then in the T body, that's the data. And what we're going to do, data. So what we're going to do is we're going to have like ID. There's going to be name, and this is all in curly brackets. There could be source. So that's where you're going to be able to then put in all of these informations here, and this is fixed, so this header is fixed, but then the stuff here, this is all variable. So what's going to end up happening is as this component goes from like component 1 to component 2, for example, these 1, 2, 3 could be different. So it could be 1, 2, 3, and it could have different things. So what's really great is you have this helper template here that then sends information to this component that you want to render to basically tell it, hey, model this format, but I'm going to put in different data in here. So that's what's, I think, a really helpful way to think about passing in data as props. And you sort of think about sort of passing information through or passing information down. So hopefully that's helpful. So what we're going to do is we are going to create sort of those two different files. So for the first one, let us create a pass in data as props file. So we're going to create a new file. this let me, yeah, new file. So 03, make this as a JSX file. So this is what I'm going to use to basically model this out. So we're going to do RAFCE. It already knows that it's fruit, but I'm going to make this again React friendly. So export fruit, save this. And what we're going to do is create, so obviously it's creating this fruit. We're going to pass in a number of different variables here. So we're going to pass in the ID, we're going to pass in the name, we're going to pass in the color, we're going to pass in the location, we're going to pass in the purchased on date, we're going to pass in the description, and we're going to pass in the source. So make sure this is all right. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, great. So these are the 7 properties that we are going to pass into this fruit component. Now, when we return this, we're then going to create our table. So this might look pretty familiar to you again. And then hopefully this will be helpful to kind of go through again. It won't seem too redundant. But what we're going to do is we're going to do t-head. Head, and this is going to be for those header components, so for the top level resources. So we are going to copy this because we like to copy things when we can in our code to be efficient. So I'm going to copy this in here. Okay, great. So we're going to do some little bit more indentation. So tr 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So this is all of those 7 parameters. So then what's the point of this? Why are we passing in this? Well, what we can do is after t-head, we can do something called t-body, which is going to be the sort of those sub-elements of the table. And then we're going to do tr again, doing a row. And now what is cool is when we do td here, something that we can do is pass id. And then else that we can do is pass the name. For the third one, we can add color. For the next one, we can add location. Fifth one, on. For this one, and this one, source. And we're just going to want to make sure that this all lines up correctly, because if these variables aren't correct, then that will mess stuff up. So I'm just going to make sure that this is all there. So ID, name, color, location, purchased on, description, and source. Okay, great. So these are all going to be the same, and this will match up correctly. Okay, great. So now when we save it, well, nothing happened. Well, that's because we haven't passed in the data yet. So, in this specific template helper file. So now what we want to be able to do is we're going to go back to our past data as this, right? We're now going to say import fruit from our file that says fruit. So this one, and that's this file right here. So semicolons there. So now what we want to do is, let's say that we want to create a fruit component, and it's going to have a number of different variables, or we can actually close this out. So now in this fruit, so we want to have those 7 different components as variables. So we're going to have, maybe this first one is ID 0, right? That's what we said for strawberry. This is the name of it. So the name of it is a strawberry. Next one is the color, and we know that strawberries are red. We know that its location equals Doha. We know that it's purchased on date is 12/01/2021, and its description, we're going to copy this in thanks to Britannica. And then our source, or copy the link to cite our source. Okay, awesome. We're going to declare our variable called fruit as props. We're going to return that, and we are going to have a div with a series of items. ID. Mix that up. We're then going to do name. I just want to see if this will work. Okay, so this is working. So what we're going to want to do is 8, 4, 5, 6, 7. So let us try to reconstruct what is actually going on. So in terms of locations, we got this there, just on, description, source. So now what we're doing here is we are getting the props of ID based upon the fruit. So the way that pass status props works is, right, so you have this component that has these identification or these variables here, and then it uses this helper, or I like to think of it as a helper file that's basically saying, okay, there's going to be props from ID, there's props from name, there's these different props. Then when there are those props present, you're going to list them out. So that's how we basically get this item that looks exactly like this. So now what we want to basically do is then destructure our basically this specific format. So what we're going to do is we're going to make this out. So, and I'll just say sort of this is the use case with props. On the second one, use case with destructuring. So let's destructure the fruit item for a second. So when we have this variable fruit, we're going to pass in a number of different elements. So there's going to be an ID, so the name, the color, there's going to be a location, there's a purchased on, there is a description, it already kind of, there's a description, it already knows that we want that, and there's a source. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So there's these 7 elements here that's related to the fruit. Now, instead of needing to say props whatever, blah, 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 we could just have all of this stuff go in here, and now we can just call it directly. So we are then going to this here. So we have these items and we're basically structuring. So there's these properties passed into the component, and then we're going to render those down below. So that should work well, or if we save it, if it does, and there's no change, which is great. So that means that we are still operating and working as normal, which is great for us. So now if we wanted to basically do the same thing, but now put it into a table, we're then going to model basically the same thing. So I'm going to copy this, and I believe what we can then do is uncomment this out again. And what we're going to do is we needed this squiggly bracket. That was the pesky thing. Okay, cool. So now once we add this, this should all work according to plan. Awesome. Okay. So it always comes down to that last little thing of the bracket or the semicolon or something small. You get like 99% of the way there, and then there's that 1%. So just be sure to make sure you have that squiggly bracket there. And now what we'll be able to do is have these items here, which is great. So now this is looking exactly like the table before, and we're passing in this prop. So again, there's this helper file that's saying, okay, we have these items that we want the component to use. There's going to be this item, but the items are going to go like this. And then when those items are present, it's then going to create this mapped component, which is great. And it's mapping to that specific thing, which is really great. Awesome. So we are now doing really, really well. Okay. So awesome. We can definitely pat ourselves on the back here. This was great. And we just blasted through our third method. So give ourselves the green check mark of approval. And now what we can do is list out sort of the HR, give ourselves a line. And now we are over halfway done. So we are now going to go through the fourth method. So the fourth method, which is what we are going to be going through, is specifically JSON data. So let us go through that right now. So method 4, pass JSON data into table. What we're going to do is we will create a JSON table or a JSON file and pass that data into our application. And put a little bit of an enter there just so that we can keep track of that type of stuff. Okay, great. So now what we're going to do is we are going to do something a little bit different. So what you've sort of seen is sort of, it's definitely repetitive to be able to have to, manually put all of this in, or write all of this stuff out, or declare all these variables. Especially like we're finding more and more efficient ways of working with this data, but there has to be a really efficient way where we can just maybe pull from a data source or pull from a file that has all of this already pre-configured for us. And lucky for us, we can. So I'm just doing a little bit of organization here. I'm going to create a file a folder called data. And then I already have JSON data of fruits that I've created, but I'm going to create a file called fruits.json. And JSON is just an easy way to store arrays and strings together. So this is the information that I have here. So I've created this array, which you'll see here with the bracket. Then there's these individual items, so individual arrays. So for each item or for each object, there's like the identification, right? There's the name of the fruit. So strawberry, red or apple, grapefruit, blueberry, banana. It each has a color. The colors are different. Their locations are all different. The dates that they were purchased on is all different. The descriptions, thanks to Britannica, all of those descriptions are different. And then in terms of source, this is different links, which you'll see to each of the Britannica links. So this is similar to if you've ever seen API data or an RSS feed or any sort of, endpoint where you could have data. Oftentimes it's in JSON. Often with REST API requests, it looks similar to something like this. GraphQL data schemas are similar, and it uses a sort of a similar naming convention, but it uses GraphQL as a query language. But it's all sort of the same thing of here's this parameter or the scalar type or a variable, and then there is some output. So it could be a number integer, it could be a file type, it could be sort of anything that is able to be analyzed or shown, the data will come up there. So what's really great about this is we're able to then have sort of this systematic way of going through data, which I think is really helpful and really beneficial. So we're going to take fruits.json data, and we are going to now create a component that's going to take all of this in and help us visualize it. So once we have the data, we're then, as I'm sure you're going to guess, we'll create a new component. So 04 JSON data.json. Put the light on, it's got pretty dark in here. Okay, cool. So with JSON, so that's that. Okay, we're going to do ReactJS. Oh, and I chose the wrong endpoint here. So that's JS. Now it should be able to be worked. So ReactJS. And I'm going to hope that Oh yeah, it was just a little bit slow. Okay, cool. So we're creating the arrow function with this, and we're gonna again make this into readable format. So JSON data. Then we're going to have this there. In the div, we are going to say page 3. We're going to say JSON data table goes here. And now, if you remember from before, we're going to import this here. So we'll do under method 4, we'll do JSON data, and it already knows that this is a component. We want to not have the JSON interface resolver. We just want to have the JSON data, which is our component. You'll see here, it's already letting us know that that's what we want, or could potentially want, but we want that one. So again, we have it there, and as soon as we press save, we should see it there. Okay, great. So this component is now on our page, which is exactly what we want to see. So now, how do we exactly get this data from the JSON into our table? So, of course, what we're going to do is we are going to do a number of different things. We are going to create our table again. So I'm going to actually copy our table that we wrote previously, because this is the closest thing that we have to something like this. Actually, I want to see if we have the t-body. Yeah, okay. So we're going to copy it from our helper file. So this is the table, and we are going to put this here. That's there. Now it's going to freak out because it doesn't know what an ID or name or color or location or purchase on or any of these things are, right? It has no way of knowing that right now. So what we really want to be able to do is take our data. So at the top level, we're going to say import. We're going to call it data, and we're going to say from. We are going to then go back. We're going to do data, and we're going to call our fruits.json file. So it already knows that that's what it is. So that's that. And I found this on Stack Overflow is a really great solution that sort of helps to make things easier. So hopefully having a visual component to this sort of methodology will be helpful. And I'm actually going to save this. Actually, I won't save it now, but I will in a second. So basically what we're doing is we're creating a component that's going to store the data that we get from our JSON file that we've already put in. So this, again, this is the that data, the fruits.json data here. And we are then going to be creating a component to map that, right? Now, in order to do this, we do need to use a hook from React. And hooks are really great for managing a whole bunch of stuff in React, but specifically we're going to use the useEffect hook. And the useEffect hook is really helpful because that allows us to store data, specifically JSON data, like what you'll see. And we're then able to then use that in state and then store that in the application to then render it somewhere. So it's going to basically suck that data from a file, hold it in state, and then we're going to be able to then put that into different areas that we want to put it into. So the way that we do this is we're going to say const, we're going to say fruits, and then set fruits. And you need to use this methodology because basically with useState, if you are basically updating something or calling something or updating something, you do set fruits. But since we're not going to be using any updates, we're not going to need set fruits. We just need to be able to call the data. So we're just going to use fruits. So use state and then data. So what we're going to do here is we're taking in fruits, and we're going to be able to, and actually I'm going to just remove this, but it's just helpful for context, just for you to see that there's the data storing, and then there's the data updating. And we're calling this here, but we haven't called use state yet. So we're going to do this. We're going to say use state from the React dependency library. Okay, great. So now we're here. Now what we're going to do is all of this stuff is great, right? We have our headers, we have our top level components, but we do not specifically have a way to get the data into the body, and we do need that. So what's a really great way to render a table row for each item in an array is with the map feature. So when we have t-body, right? So I'm just going to separate this. So again, header, body. So what we want to have under the t-body is a way to basically take all of the fruits that are going to be stored in state from the data and then put that into our application. So I'm going to call fruits, from above here. I'm then going to say map. I'm then going to pass in fruit. So each of these individual items that are in the JSON data, those are individual fruits. Those are individual objects. We want to be able to take each of those identify them and then map them to the state, right? We want to be able to call those all out. So what we're going to do is we're going to say this. We're going to say arrow function here. We're going to have a parenthesis. And now what we're going to do is we are going to bring all of this down a level. So we want to have all of this inside of here. Then at the end of TRR, we're going to have this there. So, all right, so we're calling the fruits in state. We're using map, and we're going to map fruit. Each of these individual array items, we are then going to map those into the different rows of the data. So now, why is it complaining about this? I have all of these variables. Well, we haven't actually called them onto each object yet. So what we do is we say fruit.id, we say fruit.name, we say fruit.color, say fruit.location, we say fruit.purchased, we say fruit.description, and we say fruit.sort. So again, we're making each of these individual objects. We are pulling from fruits here. I'm actually going to remove this because we're not updating the state. We are just calling the state or using it. So as soon as I save this, I'm going to hope that it's going to map all this data. And it looked like it did. Okay, this is awesome. So again, what we're doing is we're calling from this specific JSON data, and I'm going to actually, I'm going to put this to the right a little bit just so that you can see. I think this is just sort of helpful for some context. So when we have this JSON data, right? So each of these objects has these same 7 parameters. This is going to make it really easy for us to then link all of this data into our table. So for example, again, it has the ID, and each of these items, we're just calling them fruits. We could call them anything, but specifically we're calling it fruit. And fruit.id, fruit.name, fruit.color, .location, purchased on, description, and source. So all of these items will have these same tags or variables. Now, when we map them, we're calling it from the state, from the data file, which is that JSON. The data enters here, we use it in state. We say fruits here, just to give it a name. We then use the mapping feature to then map these different attribute allocations for each of these items. So this is awesome because now I didn't have to code this, 7 times. I was able to just basically create this little template and then call based upon the data that's there. And that's really great to be able to just do that so fast. This is why JSON data mapping into a table is really efficient. The other ways are good to know to be able to create that table, but this is going to be the most scalable, highly fast way. And especially and I've been doing some stuff with DynamoDB. It's a NoSQL database in AWS, but you might be able to get your data back as files that look like this, like JSON data, or maybe it looks sort of like a REST request, but it'll look similar to these types of identification. Also, you could use GraphQL and you could be able to call certain items back, and it looks similar to this. This is going to be really fast because then you're able to just say, okay, all the items here, let's map it. And if you want to get really creative, you could maybe say like, okay, after 3 of these items, let's make a page. And then you could paginate different items together. So there's different use cases and different design styles. I'm just showing you how to get the data into the table. And then of course, you could go crazy with the designs and everything. But this is awesome to have that fundamental understanding of how the data can be then mapped and then put into a table, because this is awesome. So we have this here, which is great, and we save this. And again, we're going to give ourselves a pat on the back because we just did that, which is awesome. We're going to save this. All right, method 4 is done. All right, now what possibly could we be going on with method number 5? So I am going to show you. So for method number 5, we are going to be creating some variables with information, and then we're going to call those variables directly. So I'm going to get some water. All right, so method number 5 is exported JS file objects. All right. So now for this, so we are basically going to do the same thing as JSON, but the structure each array and use the spread operator to render them out. Okay, cool. So we're gonna save this here. We're gonna have this here. So it's gonna be very similar to what we just did, except we're gonna use something new called the spread operator, and we're gonna destructure the array in the same similar way. So let us say that instead of having, the data as JSON, like what you see here, we're gonna create a new file and we're gonna call this fruits.js. So let's say that we wanted to create a file that had these as objects and you exported them as variables. Again, I'm exporting a variable called strawberry. I'm exporting a variable called apple. I'm exporting a variable called blueberry. I'm exporting a variable called banana or peach or cherry or grapefruit or any fruit that you want. So when we have these items, right, these are all exported as variables basically. So if we wanted to then put these items into an application, there's a great use case for this. So what we're going to be doing is, as I'm sure you guessed, we are going to be creating a file here called JS, and we are going to do RAFCE again. I'm sure you're all well familiar with that. So we're going to do exporter.js. We're going to call this here. We're going to say h3 JS table goes here, dot, dot. All right, so we're going to save this. We are then going to call this from within our app, and I'm just going to indent this. Exporter.js, it already knows we have this. VS Code is awesome for that. And again, we don't even have to import it. It's already here. Okay, great. So now when we save it, we should be able to see that there. It's already rendering the component, which is great. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do const fruit in this. And we are going to basically do something very, very, very similar. So what we can do is const fruit. We're then going to put in some destructured variables. So we're going to do ID, name, color, location, purchased on, description, source. We have that all there. Awesome. So now in the return statement, we are going to then copy that same table that we had before. So we're just going to rewrite this again. So do table. We're going to do t head. Going to make this a little bit more organized. Oh, and do that. Head, and then tr. We then going to do th ID. And I'm just going to copy this from before because this will make it really easy. Now for tbody, we're going to be copying the same thing. So again, there's the t head under the table for the top level ones, and then there's tbody for the lower ones, or basically the elements that are going to be in the array. So we'll also copy this just to be fruit to be consistent. So that is all well and good, and we're just going to make sure that all of this wraps up, which is great. So that's there. So again, we have our header, but we don't have any sort of information in this, right? So we should be able to, but that's because we haven't imported anything yet. So a cool way that we can do this is with the spread operator. So when we are now going to create our variables, or sort of our components, because we want to map it in a similar way, right? So what we're going to do is create a component called export.js, except now what we're going to do is do this cool thing where we have these curly brackets, 3 dots, and then we're going to say strawberry. So now it's going to go under data and it wants fruits. So I'm not exactly sure if that is what we want specifically to do. So I'm not going to do that, but I just want to show you actually the methodology around this. So when we do strawberry, what we then need to do is import strawberry. Our data fruits.js. So we're going to basically be calling from this fruits.js file, except we want to destructure it because we're getting data, the information. So we want to be able to then import not strawberry as a component, but strawberry as its data variables. And then we're putting that into the format that we had before. So again, just to kind of show you, so there's this ID, name, color, location, purchase on, description, source. That's going to be the same as this. So ID, name, color, location, purchased on, description, and source. So it already knows that these are the variable items, the data, and we are then going to be calling those in here. And then in the app.js, we import this. We're taking in this variable, which again is, it has this template. It's sort of the helper format, right? Template file. That's the helper. And then we map with the spread operator strawberry through this file or through this component. So when we save it, we see it there. So now instead of needing to basically hard code all of this stuff out, right? We're able to just define exactly what we want and then pass in this strawberry with these exported, JavaScript object parameters using the spread operator into these fields. So this is a cool way that you can combine different data types and sort of link them all together and sort of use these helper template files to be able to then do that. And again, let's say that I wanted to create another table and I wanted to do the same thing, but with a different fruit. So let's say that we want to do grapefruit. We want like a ruby red grapefruit to be in here, right? So what we're going to do is call grapefruit from here, from the fruits. It is here. I'm going to save it. And look at that. So now it's already creating this second item here with the information from grapefruit, and it's already listing it there. All right, so this is awesome. And this is just another really great use case for being able to render data into our application. So again, we're going to give ourselves a green check mark. This is awesome. We just blasted through these 5 different examples, and just to kind of put into perspective, so just from the top. So we hard-coded data, and really just let's review exactly what we did because we just did a lot. So what we did was we hard-coded a table in HTML, well, in JavaScript, but in HTML, but specifically hard-coding in items. We then used template literals to then create some variables and then call those into our table. We then learned how to pass data in as props into a specific table with rows. And then we learned how to hook up and create our own JSON data file and then pass in JSON data into a table directly with the map feature. And then we use something called the spread operator to create an exported JavaScript object and put that into a table. So these are 5 different methodologies for how to create a table. And something that I think is pretty powerful, just when you think of how to manage your own data in your application, you're able to then map and bring in certain features or certain data or certain information responsively, interactively. If you're hooked up to an API, you're able to do this responsively and have it call, and then you're able to then render that items or that data in those items individually, in a table, in a grid system. There's a lot of really great use cases for this type of structuring. So I hope this video was really helpful for you. I'd love for you to like the like button or destroy that like button for the YouTube algorithm, and subscribe to this channel if you want more content. Also, let me know in the comments below if you have any specific requests or if you had any questions on the data, or if anything isn't working, let me know and I'll try to help you. But yeah, I hope this was really helpful for you all, and it was interesting to sort of show different ways to create and render data and information. So again, super excited for you all to check this out, and yeah, let me know what you think. But until next time, I will see you all later. Thanks everyone. Bye.